So today I'm going to see about getting this little guy saddled and cinched. But first I'm going to let him have some turnout. So he's got all of his funnies out and hopefully doesn't want to buck and leap and all of that. And we'll see how it goes with the second time around, putting the saddle on and cinching him up a little bit, and we'll see how far we get. He did most of his crazy runaround already, but I'm doing a little bit of free lunging, I guess, a little round penning, make sure his brain's with me and that all the physical need to run and buck is gone. Good boy. So Junior was really interested in what was going on everywhere else but in the round pen with me. The two other horses that he could see in the paddock were face fighting and leaping and jumping. And usually it doesn't take me this long to get his attention back on me, but I started to do a change of direction to see if that would bring him a little bit more interested in what I was saying. And it kind of didn't. You could see his ears kept on looking elsewhere. So what I found with him sometimes works is actually getting his feet moving around a little bit more. Sometimes that brings him back down to me. Sometimes that gets him more elevated. In this case, it was kind of doing both. There would be moments where he'd come back to me and then moments where he was just kind of running around with his head up. And so I am using a little bit of forward and change directions, and now he's lowering his head and using his body a lot better. So that was good. Really what I was trying to accomplish here was just ensuring that all of my regular lunging aids are there, and when we put the saddle on and I get him to start moving forward, that we've got what we normally do. He actually changing directions here at the trot. You can see he's not really quite as responsive and I have to get after him a little bit. Really, he's just trying to drift that shoulder and not face me. And in this sequence, I teach it with the stick as an extension of my arm to move that shoulder over. But what I've been doing more is, well, I haven't been using the stick for weeks, but I'm trying to encourage him more to turn and look at me and then turn and change directions. So you'll see what I start doing is less of just the point and turn and change direction, but softly walk towards me as I catch his eye and back a couple of steps. And here you'll see that he's starting to do that a lot softer. This is the normal way I like to get him to turn around because it's less abrasive and jumpy, and it encourages him to get a little bit more onto his hind end and think about where his body is. Instead of just assuming that we're going to change directions, like there you can see I stepped back and then he kind of thought, oh, which way are we going to go? So I continued backing up. So he just followed me and there we go. And then ask him to softly turn. So this was a nice warm-up. It worked out pretty well. You can see his demeanor's changed a bit. He's less looking around. His head's up a little bit more than normal, but he's finding moments where he relaxes and drives from his hip a little bit. And so that's encouraging to see. At this point, I wasn't entirely sure if it was a good day to do the saddle again, but since I was able to kind of bring him back to me, I figured we might as well continue and see what we've got. Now at this point he's already been introduced to the saddle pad for at least a month, maybe a little bit more. I always put the saddle pad on before the surcingle. I feel like it just makes it a little bit more comfortable for him to wear the surcingle and allows me the exposure for the pad for him. So that's why I didn't spend too much time, because he's used to that getting tossed on him. And here I'm letting him look at the saddle again, because this is only his second time seeing it. So I spend just a little bit of time waving it next to him and letting him see that it's coming towards him. And because he didn't seem to mind, go ahead and plop it on him, and then I repeat that a couple times each direction, or on each side. Now on this side he's doing what he's been doing a little bit when I've been tightening the surcingle, just taking a couple of kind of tentative steps backwards. And this time he does it a second time, and instead of trying to correct him in the moment, I go ahead and just resituate the saddle, mostly because I didn't want to move him forward and then he explode or something and then the saddle come off. So I wait until he's calm, and then I take the saddle off. And then this time I make him follow me back forward, so he gets to thinking again about stepping forward. And then he still wants to move away from it a little bit, so I spend a few moments just flapping it next to him and advanced retreating type deal, so that he's feeling more secure about the saddle on this side. And this time he's really good about it. You can even see he's licking and chewing his lips a little bit. So I go ahead and leave it on this time and start advancing with the cinch and the girthing process. And I don't spend too much time introducing the girth to him. I do flap it here a little bit because it probably feels a little bit different, and we're in a different situation now with the saddle on. But because he's been wearing the surcingle well for the last month or so, I go ahead and start slowly cinching it up. Now he hasn't felt a rear cinch yet, so I'm a little bit cautious this time. I spend some time also flapping the back cinch up against his flank or his belly there and allowing him to feel it and hear the sounds of it. And I do cinch it, I think it was like 2 holes loose than what I would normally do, because I didn't want it to be another tight pressure point for him, but I did want it to be high enough that if he did explode or something, it wasn't going to suddenly be pulling around and flapping around on him and getting him all concerned. Now with him pawing the ground there, it started to feel like he's getting a little bit impatient about this, so I felt like I needed to go ahead and make sure the saddle was snug enough so if he exploded it wouldn't be catastrophic, but to encourage him to step his front feet over a little bit here. And he does, he's just a little more resistive than normal. Normally he would step off a lot easier, so my gut told me that he's still feeling a little unsure about the whole procedure, and I didn't really want to push it too far today. So after I get another little step and one little try again from him, I decided to go ahead and take the saddle off. Now, upon watching this, I do kind of wish that I had asked for just a little bit more so that he doesn't learn any bad habits about not moving with the saddle. But I think we're early enough in the process that next go around, I can ensure that he moves off more and we get a little bit more than today. I just didn't want to get anything too overdone on this first time cinching it. Since we didn't move forward with actually walking around or moving around with the cinch tightened, I decided to use this time to let him see both stirrups flap on his sides a little bit. I would normally do that when it's actually tight in case it panicked them and they leapt forward, then the saddle won't come off. He just felt like he was going to handle it okay, and I know that's not a very definitive answer. It was just kind of how I was feeling about it. So I decided to let him walk around with the saddle on, since he didn't want to move much with it cinched. I thought this would be a good way for him to still have to move under its weight in a gentle way, for him to experience still moving with the saddle, but maybe not so many new things at once with the cinch. Well, we didn't get the full process done. This was the first time I put it on him in here. Last time he was tied up, so I wasn't really sure how that was gonna work out. With the surcingle, he's gotten in a habit where when I cinch it, he tries to back up. So I put it on, I cinched it. I'd say I cinched it about 70% of the way, enough that if he exploded, that it wasn't gonna slip off and be catastrophic. But he did. This was the first time he felt anything on that rear cinch. I don't have anything attached to the surcingle in that way. So again, I didn't want it tight like a bucking strap for him. And the equipment's a tad big still. He's got the 28-inch mohair cinch on it and a smaller, I think it's also like a 28-inch rear cinch. So I think it'll work okay. But with that being said, we didn't tighten it up all the way. Get off. He's a nosy little guy. He loves to be all up in my business. Leaning in me and pushing on me and in my bubble. So, side note, this is what worked when Milo was young and mouthy and I did showmanship with him and all he wanted to do was bite me all the time. Instead of smacking him, I would hold my arm out and then let him find that that's my boundary. Now he's gonna chew on the saddle. Don't chew on my saddle, please. So I could tell when it was semi-cinched, he didn't really have an idea of how to move with the weight on him. So that's where I felt like instead of sending him out and possibly getting an explosion, I thought I would loosen the cinch and let him walk around with it on himself. I didn't feel like it was going to be very beneficial if I had him move out with the saddle on that 70% at the time, because he didn't really feel like he wanted to move. So instead I just made him yield his shoulder over a couple of steps, I think maybe like 2 or 3 steps, and make sure that he equates that he can move a little bit. So I decided to loosen the cinch and let him just walk around with the weight of the saddle on and not the weight plus the cinched aspect of it, and give him that opportunity to feel the weight of the saddle on its own. And so I think that this was a good place today. He's a little bit high on life today. The other horses in the paddock have been face fighting and rearing, and he's been very interested in that. And I think that was all a really good start for him today, and we'll progress on it as the week comes. And hopefully the next time I'll just get it tight enough like I did today, and then go ahead and get him to start moving, and hopefully that won't result in any airs above ground.